Okay, we're ready to get started. Everybody ready? Everybody had their coffee, bagels? Do we have bagels this year? No? All right. I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2013 Louisville InfoSec Conference. We appreciate you making the trip, spending the day with us. We have a great day planned for you. On behalf of the conference and the ISC Kentucky Chapter, I'd like to introduce myself, Randall Fritchie. I am the chair of the conference this year, also the president of the ISC Kentucky Chapter for a couple of years. 6 years total, 9 years I've been with that chapter. Been hanging around for a little while. I was awake. Everybody awake yet? I know most everybody in here. So every year we work to make this a great event for you. Every year we get a little better. More like an well-oiled machine in here now. I hope it's really nice for you guys, and we appreciate you coming out. We really have a lot of good speakers this year. We have some great keynote sponsors who have joined us, and some regular sponsors. So as you guys have been hearing for many years from me, we exist here to give you three things, whether you're a member of the chapter, whether you're coming to the conference. Anybody know what those three things are? What is it? Learning, opportunities for learning. Come out here, listen to these speakers, pretty much experts in their field, learn a lot from them. What's the next one? Networking. You get to come out and meet all of these people. We have 450 people registered this year. Really, all over this region. This conference has grown. It used to be in the Hilton Garden Inn. Remember that? Anybody remember that? So for those of you that don't remember, we were in the Hilton Garden Inn. We had about 20 people show up. And I was making a joke about the bagels because that's what we had. We had orange juice and bagels, pretty much. I think we had bologna sandwiches for lunch. And then we went to Churchill Downs, and we outgrew Churchill Downs. So that's a pretty awesome thing. We came here because it's a lot bigger of a venue, and it's been an awesome venue. Anyway, so the networking with all these folks here. And the last thing is fun. We try to make it fun. They're not formal, not stuffy. Nobody's wearing a tuxedo. We're all here to have fun and try to give you some good food and good time. So we hope you enjoy it, and we appreciate you coming out. I want to go through our list real quick, and can everybody hear me? I feel like I'm talking right into the mic. You all right? So our sponsors this year, keynote sponsors, Trusted Sec, Nexum, Fortinet, and Dell Soniclaw. We also have Fishnet Security, Tripwire, Checkpoint, Varonis, Sullivan University, SDG Blue, Mountjoy, Chilton Medley, NetSPI, InfraGuards here, Robert Half. We have the ISC Squared here. They are a budding new chapter in Louisville. If you haven't heard about them, go visit their booth. We also have representatives here from OWASP. And we also have ISACA here, represented from the local chapter. So our speakers, we have Matt Witten, who's going to be up here shortly, doing our breakfast keynote. Dave Kennedy is going to do our lunch keynote. We also have Carl Fossen. Sorry if I said that wrong. Jim Cervanka, did say that right. Brian Cusack, Miss Greenfield, Scott MacArthur, Michael Carr, Conrad Reynolds, Pete Lindstrom, Adrian Crenshaw, Jeremy Gruen, Kelman Mehu. I'm sorry if I butchered that one. And Joseph Ranieri and Blake Roush from FBI here. Joshua Bartley. Where did we get all these people with the names this year, right? Mehdi. Shout out. Sobrowdy. Jimmy Murphy. And Nathan Sweeney. So our speakers. I also want to recognize our board for the chapter and our volunteers. We have Kelly Miller, who's our vice president. Carl Alexander, who is our director of marketing. Missy Vaughn is our treasurer. Sherman Blackburn is the director of something. There he is. He's the director of communication. Todd Kravitz is the director of programs. We also have Daryl Keeling, who's on our board as an advisor. Jeff Durecki is the director of member relations. And TJ Krivitz has helped us out this year. I think Michael Sanders also is here today, maybe coming in a little bit later. So I want to thank all of those people today. So in your program, you have a bingo card. It's got the logos on it. So we will be giving away an iPad mini at the end of the day. Go around to all the sponsor booths. You guys have been there before, you know how it works, right? You go around, get them stamped your card, right? And you get the bingo filled out, and then you drop it off at the registration desk. At the end of the day, we'll pull from those bingo cards and we'll give out prizes. And the grand prize is an iPad mini. I think Ford has given away a Ferrari. Just a little one. Also, if you want CPEs, you get 6 CPEs for being here today. After 3 p.m., you can pick those up at the registration desk. I also want to mention Hackers for Charity. Hackers for Charity is something this chapter has been supporting for a long time, and we are giving a raffle for them. It's $1 a ticket. All proceeds go to Hackers for Charity. You know, remember Johnny Long? If I remember him. So he does the Hackers for Charity. So in the toy room over there, you got the raffle, $1 ticket, and the proceeds go to Hackers for Charity. And we give away some prizes for that. One of them is a lockpit set, and one of them is a signed copy of Kevin Mitnick's book, Ghost in the Wires. We'll go over our agenda real quick, and then we'll get started. So Matt Witten, we have morning breakouts from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. We're going to have lunch around noon. The numbers here are a little bit gray. Try to make sure that we stay on time. At 1 o'clock, we have our keynote lunch presentation. At 2 o'clock, we will have some more breakouts. And at 4:30, we will have our closing ceremony. 4:30, if you'll be back in here, we will start giving away some stuff. Okay. So at this time, I would like to introduce one of our keynote sponsors, Mr. Jeff Vonderheit from Nexon. Give him a hand.
Good morning. Thank you, Randall. I'd like to first thank the board, ISSA board, for allowing us to be a part of the biggest show I have every year. I cover 6 states throughout the Southeast, and this is by far the most successful chapter, as well as the most successful conference I have every year. And we've been there since the Hilton Garden, and it's been a pleasure. Just a quick little commercial here about Nexum. For those of you who don't know who we are, we're headquartered out of Chicago, 12 years in business. Started as a checkpoint training center, actually, and have grown from there to be nationwide. We've got a solutions group headed up by Mike Scheer, who used to be the director of the Neo-Hapsis Labs, if you remember the Chicago Labs testing laboratory. Mike was director there. He now runs our solutions group, and that's basically a group including published white hats like Raven Alder, folks that are very good at security assessments, gap analysis, configuration sanity checks, if you will, come in and determine where a customer's big red X's are in the world of compliance and security concerns today, which are paramount. And this is pretty much trying to get customers ready for whatever regime they happen to report through, whether it's PCI, HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, you mentioned it. Mike then went and got his law degree, so he's our general counsel as well, so he understands these compliance requirements, as well as understanding legalese, and can help very quickly with contractual issues that always come into play. So that team basically comes in and determines, like I said, where the big red X's are. If we were you, what would we be doing with your budget to get you where you need to be with reference to applications being available, being fast, being trusted, always being secure. And again, I'll put a caveat in there that there's no such thing as 100% security. I'd be lying to you if there was, but we help customers get as close as possible from a policy, procedure, and technology perspective. We back that up then with product. Obviously, you've got to sell product to keep high-level engineers on staff, and we've got best-of-breed technologies. Our company mission statement, tagline, if you will, is do what's right for the customer and success will naturally follow. We're not a box pusher. We're not going to sell technologies that we don't believe in and aren't proved out into the industry as the best-of-breed technologies. So we do sell best-of-breed technologies to keep the lights on. We've got a support organization out of 75 employees. 34 of our employees are engineers, fully certified across the gamut of our products and technologies. That support not just designs a solution for a customer, implements that solution, trains, and then is on call. So following up the support side of it, we've got a 24/7, 365 SNOC out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Basically, those folks do level 1, level 2 support on the likes of Juniper, F5, Checkpoint, Blue Coat, and Riverbed at this point, with Palo Alto and InfoBlox soon to follow. And again, that's giving you, most of these technologies when they take off, if you're in the industry very long, you know that keeping up with the tech support side of a company that goes from 100 million to $1 billion in several years is near impossible. We have a negative unemployment rate from an engineering perspective in this industry on the security side. So everyone is always looking for strong engineers, so having these folks there to back up your internal staff is a very strong key to our success. We're also an authorized training center for about 12 manufacturers, including the likes of InfoBlox, Palo Alto, some of the newer technologies. We've always been with Checkpoint, Juniper, Blue Coat, Riverbed, and F5. But we feel like if we're going to ask you to step outside of your comfort zone, which in most situations is going to be a Cisco world, and step into a technology that you may not have trained engineers on, we want to make sure that not only do we implement it and support it ongoing, but we also train your staff so you can become more self-sufficient in those new technologies. And then finally, since we built the SNOC 8 years ago out in Albuquerque, we've developed an internal managed security services offering called First Defense, and that's basically anything we can touch, whether it's servers, IPSs, firewalls, you mentioned it. Get your folks back to rolling out new policies, new processes, new applications, and not focus so much on the care and feeding of your network. We'll take that as a managed service where we can monitor, manage, and report on your network for you on a weekly basis, quarterly basis, whatever the case, alert folks when there's an issue, etc. So again, I want to thank the ISSA. I'd also like to ask, as past president and board member for the InfoGuard, if you get a chance, please go by the booth. It's a very legit organization under the auspices of the FBI, and we all get together with 13 different sectors, not just cyber, but as we know, cyber plays in almost every sector. So if you get a chance, stop by that booth. I highly urge you to become a member. In the meantime, you can come to general meetings that are not members only. If you aren't a member yet, and see what it's all about, but it's a well-worthy organization to be a part of. Thank you. Hope to see you around on the show.
This time, we'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Matt Witten. Give him a hand.
Sorry, Matt.
No worries. No worries at all. All right, can everybody in the back, can you hear me? Because I know we were having issues last year. I want to make sure that I got this right for everybody. And I'll try to speak very clear. Anyways, just want to introduce myself to for those who don't know me here. My name is Matt Witten. I'm currently the CISO for the city of Louisville. Recently just came from the University of Louisville. And from there, private sector and consulting. So I've had a pretty colored past, if you will, in the security world, in the security field. And I want to thank everybody for this opportunity today. I've been part of the Kentuckiana ISSA for quite a while, grown up in security through this chapter. And even though I've spoken at other places, it's kind of nerve-wracking speaking locally in front of a lot of my peers who I've seen a lot and getting judged by on a daily basis. So without further ado, what I want to talk to you all about today is kind of like the theme of the conference here is mobile security and how it's changing the workforce. Today, this talk is really, what I want you to take away from this is questions about how we have to rethink our security as a whole, and our security program, our security policies, because what mobile is bringing to that, and also the workforce that's coming up, that's just grown up on this, particularly students and those in school right now. So, real quick, first I want to start with a video though. How many of you all know this guy in your organization?
Hello, Carl speaking. Carl, hi, it's Bob Chase. Yes, Bob.
Well, the trouble is I need supplies.
Just walked in.
VPN,
Right, whatever.
but I can't figure out how to access the sales service.
Well,
No problem at all, Bob. Just go to the directory, mark field.
Don't worry about this part. I'm more about the actual guy in the field.
Hello?
Hey, Carl.
Yes, Bob.
I'm in a bar.
In Wichita.
Hey, listen, I just said something. I think it might have been to the wrong person.
You did what now? Yes, Bob.
Carl, say something.
I'm the executive washroom at Verizon.
Well, I took a picture of the document and then I exited it.
I'm in Vegas.
Carl, how do you post pictures?
Hello?
Carl, hi, it's Bob Chase.
Yes, Bob.
I just got a Twitter account.
Uh-huh.
All right, so there's an ad after that. But I really just wanted to show you, the prevalence of that. How many of us have those guys in the field that we just have to constantly watch what they're doing? And so mobile. So where did we actually come from? It didn't start just 5 years ago with the iPad and the iPhone, like some people like to think. This has been going on for a long time because we remember when Carl Alexander posed to this portrait of the Commodore laptop right here. Is Carl in here? If I'm going to talk about him, I would like him. But so we are going all the way back to the 1970s with a laptop that had 64K of RAM and a 204K bytes per drive. Just the history of the laptop that's gone through here, and also one of the other parts of mobile we're going to be talking about today is the history of the cell phone. Going all the way from the smartphone, and then the BlackBerry. And I actually heard a great story the other day from NPR talking about thanking Wall Street for almost like the boom of the smartphone industry, because they came almost from nowhere, and all of a sudden you see people on Wall Street with their BlackBerries, and then all of a sudden the extra special people had 2 BlackBerries, and then all of a sudden you have a utility belt of cell phone. And then one of the more could be considered like the forgotten mobile that I really want to specify today, and I have a great person to talk about, but is the GPS industry. How many people here got here using Google Maps or their Garmin, their TomToms today? I can see if you are here, you did not use Apple Maps because you're not hanging off the side of the exit ramp. So that's a good thing. But where are we headed in mobile? So right now, there's been studies that come out and saying where they're predicting 4 billion devices by the year 2014, and they're also talking about 20 billion by the year 2020. So we're not talking about just a fad here. We're talking about kind of how we're moving into the future, and how we're going for technology. Because when I've talked to different organizations here lately, I was actually speaking to one the other day that had an incident going on, and they were saying, when I said, how many computers do you all have in your company? They said, we got about 30. And I said, well, how many smartphones, or do you all do email and everything on your smartphones and your tablets? And he said, yeah. I said, well, how much is that? And they're like, oh, actually, that bumps us to about 80 to 90. Because right now they're actually about 1.4 smart devices per person in the organization. So how are we going to wrap our heads around this? Do we allow personal devices on our network? BYOD, that's either a good thing or it's the next devil word for our security professionals. And, do we allow company purchase devices? But really what I want you to kind of get from this is we're kind of heading into this perfect storm, if you will. And as I go through this, you'll kind of see what I mean. But when I say the perfect storm, we have millions of smart devices coming onto our network. We have an inherently insecure backbone, but we also have a lot of apathetic or kind of clueless users. No offense to our users. But we really don't care if it's secure. They just want it to work. They just think it's cool to have it. They want to be able to get on their network. They want to be able to see their email, and of course, they just want to be able to carry around the iPad. But the other thing we have, the thing that's making the perfect storm is, even though we have the apathetic users, we have very intelligent bad guys out there who are breaking this. If you saw any of the talks from DEF CON Black Hat this year, like Prius being manipulated, or any of the healthcare devices that are starting to be manipulated and to be hacked, that's really what we are looking at. And even we're working on right now with two-factor authentication. The vendors are trying to tell us, well, we can just send the PIN to your smartphone. So they're even pulling away from the key fobs and proximity cards and passing. This is another option you can use. And some of the higher ups like it because we already have that technology. So, but when we talk about BYOD, and I know some people, it's company-owned devices only, but really, can we really say that if we allow web email access? That they're going to get on somehow. But the problem with what we have with BYOD is when I say forget the past, we don't have the traditional admin and user roles anymore. We can't go in like a Microsoft computer and just lock down the computer like we have, or make sure that when it's connecting to our network that it has certain things. And we can't vet the apps that they're putting on this phone. So our traditional policies that we've had in the past, they may not be as effective, or they're not hitting on every single thing that we need to look at. Because again, I go back to, we have a lot of apathy and arrogance, and we also have a lot of ignorance because of what this new technology is bringing us. And some of the other things we think about is, so I take my Android, or I take my iPad into a meeting. Technically, in the state of Kentucky, I can have a voice recorder on it. I can record everything that's said in that meeting, and I never have to tell you. It's completely legal for me to do that. In the state of Kentucky, the privacy law state, or we don't really have individual privacy law, but the state, what it states is only one person needs to be aware of the call for the conversation being recorded. Now, I can't sit outside of the boardroom and start tapping into there. That's illegal. But that's what we need to think, just small things we need to think about there. So what we also have is, with BYOD, some things you got to think about is we're going to have the personal and corporate data being intertwined now. Even with sandboxing, if you're not familiar with sandboxing, that is when you can use like Microsoft Exchange ActiveSync, and you keep your corporate data separate from your personal data, but it's still kind of getting into intertwined in some way or fashion. So we need to think about what we need to do there. Also, geolocation, which that's where I get into all the GPS. There's some really cool things going on with GPS right now. But GPS policy, and do we really save money? That's something we're going to talk about as well. So when we talk about BYOD, we need to see, is there really a happy medium? So I had to show you Dilbert.
My only hope for productivity is to smuggle in my home laptop. What?
hand over that non-standard smartphone to keep it in the elastic of your underpants.
So going forward, do we really want to be viewed like that from the security side? I know sometimes we have to lay down the law, but is there a happy medium? Can there be a way we can work this out together? Because things with BYOD, what we really want to look at when we're talking about bring your own device is, what data is on your device? What industry are you in? What type of regulations are you under? Are you under HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, FERPA for anybody? I saw there's some education here. SOX, Dodd-Frank Privacy Act, export control data. What do we have? There's actually a study done by TechServe. It was 35% of all IT leaders are not confident their BYOD policies would be compliant. And so would that lead to fines, probation? Some of these can even lead to criminal type of intent. So, but what we also have to look at though is the productivity. If anybody remembers Harry, the linebacker, we tried to get him in the city. They won't let us have a budget. But I actually was working with a lieutenant colonel one time. This was back in, I guess, 2008. I was working with a lieutenant colonel of the Army, and he was saying about BlackBerry, how else can I have an employee work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for only $200 extra a month? I will buy you the BlackBerry, and I have them now connected forever. But what we have now started finding out with BYOD, a lot of these people are thinking, they saw the initial, we can save the cost of the hardware, but what they're seeing now is the productivity, what we thought would be better, is actually we're seeing the employees spending more time on Facebook, playing Angry Birds. I think there's a new one, Candy Crush. I have not touched it. I've heard it's like heroin, so I have not even played with it. But the third thing is, how many of you know if your company data is going into the cloud? That's something else. How easy is it for me to be in a meeting, and we do this all the time at work. We're in a brainstorming meeting of how we're going to set up this new system. We snap a picture of it, of all our whole network diagram, we put up on the whiteboard, and then we text it off or send it off if we need to, or save it for viewing for later. How many are actually snapping that picture and then just shipping it up to their Dropbox? If you allow Dropbox, that's something you have to think about. But some of the other things is the overtime. There's actually that same study that I was looking at with TechServe says 63% of all IT leaders believe BYOD is effective to increase employee access to work. But what we have to look at is, could this be an issue from an hourly employee side? There was just, I think back in February, it was just decided, the Chicago Police Department back in 2010 sued the city of Chicago because the sergeants were being pressured to answer their BlackBerries when they were off duty. And the sergeants in Chicago are hourly employees. They are not salary or exempt employees. So they were being forced, and the superior were calling about a subpoena or case they were working on when they were off, and they were pressured to answer the emails and answer the phone. Well, now Chicago has had to pay back millions of dollars in back overtime. So that's something we have to think about from the business side. And then, so what if, we have that, but what if you have to work with unions? I do know we have some companies here who you have to deal with the union base too, so you have to worry about that. And also text messaging. And we're guilty of this all the time. You text, if you talk to somebody outside of work, are you texting them straight on your company device, or are you texting them on your personal device? So there's that business and personal data getting intertwined. So what if you have part of regulations such as HIPAA? Because it's nearly impossible to track these text messages back. Even with us having the local police department in our purview, we still can't Verizon trust us. Verizon will not turn over text messages to us without a proper subpoena. So what if you have, something to think about, what if you have a disgruntled separation? How are we going to handle that going forward? Something that we did do when I was at the University of Louisville is we actually worked with a doctors group, because that's of course we worked with the doctors group who was HIPAA, and they were texting. This is the family geriatric group. They were texting their patient information back and forth. So we were like, "Whoa, we can't do that." So we actually have. There are products now coming out there that you can do secure texting. It doesn't work over the SMS framework. It works over your data plans. But there are products out there, and I'm not promoting any products today. But the one we actually used was called Tiger Text, where it sent secure data, or it even was getting to the point where it could send a secure EKG across the wire using AES 256-bit encryption. to do that. But the other thing is, we also have a trust gap going on as well. It is said that only about 3 in 10 employees, and I think that's kind of high, absolutely trust their employer to keep their data, their personal data safe. You know, so could this eventually lead to a privacy right violation between employees and employers if we allow devices on themselves? And then, you know, some states, a lawyer is considered an officer of the state, so they can actually issue their own subpoena. So if there's some sort of private thing going on with that employee, because you know, everybody in here has probably been in that case, especially if you work in you know, the operations security side where you've had to shut down accounts right away, or you do some sort of data forensic. That we've had those employees who are having personal issues at home, and all of a sudden everything hits the fan at work, and you have to get rid of them. And then all of a sudden we're getting, you know, you could be getting subpoenas from that lawyer for the data there. Even though they subpoenaed the whole phone for the personal data, if they come across something from the business side, that could mean bad things for you. So, and last, the things to ponder is how many people have seen this. We get this quite a bit. Here, you know, everybody here, I'm sure most people have found a smartphone in their company's bathroom. You try to figure out who it is so you can play a prank on them. This is one of the things that you know that's happening more and more. Especially like if you're leaving it at a restaurant and the bathroom falls out of your pocket, somebody tries to swipe off your hip. You know, what if that is one of your accountant's phones, and all of a sudden they leave at a bar, and now Courier General just comes by, picks it up, and starts looking. You know, they see they start looking at the phone, or a competitor of some sort happens to get a hold of that phone. You know, so we look at the security we have to put on that. But then the last thing is actually another study from called the Aberdeen Group. Did a report last year, and they were actually talking about the cost of BYOD. I mentioned earlier that people were talking about, or you know, the higher ups were saying, "Oh, look, it's going to save us all this money on the initial cost of all the hardware." But they didn't see all the remedial costs or all the costs that are going to go on going into it. And they're actually finding that BYOD is costing organizations about 33% more to handle BYOD, and they're actually finding they're finding just to process the extension ports for BYOD is about $18 a process per extension port. So the last thing is, you know, if we look at BYOD, some of the things that have been coming out is, you know, you have to look at like voice overages, data, you know, the chatty analysts, or data overages, text messaging. They mentioned Florence, the bleeding heart admin who keeps texting to get $5 to $80 every day. And then, of course, international roaming is costing companies quite a bit of money. So as we talk about BYOD, though, you kind of have to intertwine going from BYOD and also talking about cloud computing. So, and when I talk about all these, I'm not dissing any of these at all. There are tons of rewards to these, and there's also a lot of risks. I just want to make sure that everybody, you have a handle on what we really have to look at here. You know, and because some people think we move it to the cloud and we lose control of our data. Now, sometimes yes, but there are options out there that there are solutions that we can work with out there. And you know, we have tons of BYOD or cloud vendors out there now. You know, and these are just some of the big ones. Dropbox, of course, is the largest one. I'm sure everybody's heard of. But something with Dropbox that you really have to worry about is that there are actually a few things with Dropbox, and I'm hoping there's no Dropbox reps in here today. I'm sorry if you are, but I'm sure, has everybody here heard of DropSmap? That has come out. It's a malware that's being released into Dropbox, and with Dropbox has over 50 million subscribers. What this gentleman had found out is using the command and control feature, you embed the malware into something that's already synced, into a file already synced, load it back into the compromised computer, wait for the victim to sync it up, and then bam, you now have full rights. And now what some people are going to say is, wait a minute, for somebody to download Dropbox onto their computer, don't they have to have admin rights to do that? Because traditionally, you have to have admin rights to download Dropbox. No, Dropbox loads its files. It bypasses the UAC by loading it onto the user's profile. So technically, the user doesn't need Dropbox or admin rights to load it onto their computer. So we really have to look at that. But then also some of the other things that some of these places, I keep going back to Dropbox because that's the one have studied the most. But if you look at their in-user agreement, they will say, this is an argument your users may come to you with. Everything that we put up in there is encrypted. See, it says it on the splash page or the brochure. Yes, technically it's encrypted, but here's the catch. If you read closely in the EULA, what it says is if law enforcement subpoenas those records or asks for those records, they will flop. They will turn it right over to them, and they will not necessarily contact you to let you know that they're turning it over. That's something, if you get into this type of agreement with some sort of cloud provider, that's something you want to make sure that's in your contract. We have a contract now with Box.com, and that's something I had to fight to put in that contract. If something's going to get turned over, you need to make sure that we see that. But also with some of these cloud providers like Dropbox, if anybody here looks at your content filtering at work, and you see how much data Dropbox is actually using, it is syncing every 3 to 5 minutes, and it's just pouring data back and forth, so it's sucking that bandwidth right away. And you're constantly connected. But some of the other things we have to think about is, what about the data leakage protect? DLP, when we talk about that. So you really got to make sure that you know what you're getting into when you're talking about the cloud, because one of the other things, if anybody here is under like export controls, where you're doing some sort of contract that would be considered with export controls, is all the data sitting in the cloud, are all those servers going to be contained within the United States? Because you cannot have a server that's staged up in Canada, over in somewhere in Europe, so you really have to look at that. But the cloud providers are starting to get more mature on this. I know this for a fact from even Microsoft, for certain organizations to start design business agreements, if those need to be in place. So that's something you can look at. So, all right. So as I get into my next thought, I really want to show you kind of what we're facing with as this next generation of users are coming onto play. And I really want to kind of talk about how it's going on in schools and everything. And this is kind of what we're dealing with.
All right, look, here's the point. Everybody, enough with the electronic devices. Turn them off. And no more of this Star Trek crap. Sure. This is an actual hearing aid? Thank you. I thought you were ignoring me this whole time. Right. Sorry. Okay, everybody else, enough with the gadgets. Put them away.
But we need them.
Abraham Lincoln went through his whole presidency without a beeper.
What's a beeper?
Never mind. I have now banned all electronic devices, including laptops.
But we use them in all of our other classes. It's how we take notes.
Okay, hey, here's a wacky idea. You want to take notes? Use a notebook.
But you said no laptops.
That's correct.
Notebook is a laptop.
Shut up. Don't you see what's happening, people? The machines are getting smarter and we're getting dumber. Do you think any of these devices are going to tell you when Custer's last stand was? That's right.
All right. So good. I think I just plugged in. Hopefully I didn't unplug something. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. Coming very quickly. We're probably already dealing with it somewhat, but kids today, that's just what they're used to. They are used. So you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to. But who has kids in school right now, especially like in JCPS? Or I just know that because I have kids in JCPS. But even what they're using. They have. If you go to JCPS website, all the different websites they can go to, such as Success Maker, Math IXL, Reading Island, Spelling. My son goes out to this website called Spelling City, logs in on spelling words, and does a word search for them. That's one of his assignments. It's pretty cool, actually. Wish I could have done that rather than just sitting there with my mom saying spell encyclopedia. It's a neater way to do it. But mobile technology and technology in itself, mobile technology is getting ingrained into these students. It's in their environment, and it's a big buzzword right now with schools. For example, does anybody hear what happened to the Los Angeles School District yesterday? anybody is up on the news, it's a great story. And the best one to actually go to is that when you get out of here, go to Google, find the ABC one, the ABC News link to it. They actually interviewed the CIO of the LAUSD, and he wasn't too happy, really, because he's like, oh, we should have looked at security more. But here's what happened. LAUSD got a $1 billion grant to give out iPads to every single student in the Los Angeles United School District. They did. They started with Roosevelt High School. They had about 300 passed out. Before the morning was over, 260 had broken the security and they had already gone out. And of course, once one knows how to do it, they're going to tell their friends. You know, it all it takes is a study hall or a lunch break, and everybody. Because if anybody here is around if you had the TI-85, the text, you know, for your scientific calculator, you know, loading the games and that, figuring out how to play Snake, that was our cool thing. But so they had figured out how to bypass. All they had to do was erase their personal profile and then reboot it, and it came back up, and they were able to get anywhere they wanted. So that, you know, so the CIO came on and he said, "Yeah, I guess we need to look at a stronger security program before we pass these out." So now they're trying to confiscate them. And have you ever seen the rage that builds up in a high schooler when you try to confiscate an iPad from them? It's not pretty. And then, so they had these students on the news. That's why I like them. They're like, they are not taking my iPad. It is not right for them to take my borrowed iPad away. So that's their mentality. So that's what you're going to be dealing with. You know, that's really what we have to look at. How can we work with that? So, you know, because how many of your kids right now, they beg and plead if they see you pull out an iPad or your Kindle Fire or something, can I play with that? You know, so it's just fascinating. That's what they want. That's what they want to see. And then a lot of education is moving in that direction as well. I don't know if anybody here has seen any of these, but like Khan Academy, Udacity, MIT OpenCourseWare, Coursera, Udemy. I actually use these personally. Udacity. You can actually take actual college courses on this site. San Jose State is recognizing them as actual college courses. I've taken Intro to Computer Programming to learn Python programming from the instructor, the professor who teaches it at University of Virginia. I've also taken Advanced Cryptology from another professor at University of Virginia on these, and it's 100% free. But here's what they're actually about to offer, is there's a partnership between Georgia Tech and AT&T partnering together with Udacity to offer, and this actually goes on if anybody's interested in getting your Master's of Science in Computer Science, they're starting applications, I think, October 7th. I have my email signed up. But it's going to be a fully accredited Master's of Science in Computer Science from Georgia Tech. The price is going to be about $6,600. You know, so if you have a company that's paying $3,000 or so a year for you to get some sort of degree, think about that. That is one heck of a deal, and it's, like I said, it's fully accredited. But that's where we are moving. So, and this is all online. This is all, you know, do it at your convenience. We have moved. Some of the big buzzwords in education right now is what they're calling a MOOC, massive open online classroom. That's what all these are up here. And then some of them you're actually seeing now is called a SPOC, which is a small closed online classroom, where what the teacher or professors are doing is you listen to the lecture before class, and then when you come into class, that's when you're doing the assignment, so you're actually in front of the teacher doing that. The teachers are becoming more the facilitators, if you will, on some of these. Then the one up here that I do have all the way up here in the top center, that one's called BuzzTouch. That one's a little bit different. That one, though, I'll put up there because that's actually a place you can go if you don't have any programming experience, develop your own mobile apps. For like $59.95 a year, I think it's a project that a few guys set up, and they help you. They teach you, you know, how to either do it with Apple with Xcode or to do it with Eclipse with Android. So you know you have people out here now. You don't have to be the programming genius to develop your own mobile app and push it out there. So you know that's something we have to think about. How we're going, but. Kind of going on kind of a leg of education is also where we're going with research. Some of the research out with mobile education, some of these you can just read, that 67% of kids are saying they can't go 1 hour without digital technology. Now, we may laugh at that, but how many of you all can go 1 hour? It's easy if I'm on the beach, but Other than that, if you're at home, how can you actually go 1 hour? It's almost the Pavlov's law. Every time I hear Mario jump, I have to see who sent me an email. 75% use mobile technology to do a quick check before test. They're on their iPhone or whatever trying to figure out what the date. Wouldn't that have been nice before your history exam to try to figure out what year Custer's last day was or go from there? And then, but they also believe that 68% are believing that it's saving them over 2 hours a day. So it's in their mind saying, this is what I need. It's going to take way too long to do it other ways. So, and then also, 51% preferring digital textbooks. They've taken online courses, but they're also saying almost 80% are now submitting all their papers and assignments online, and even taking tests and quizzes. And then this is one that's really fun. About 18%, they just received their materials via Facebook. I saw the Louisville people out here. Isn't that kind of fun to thank you? That are professors and students. That's the only way they're doing it. But one thing, going from mobile, you also move into the research. And the two people I have up here, I do respect very much. And the top one is Barnaby Jack, who unfortunately passed away right before he was supposed to give his talk this year on pacemakers. I just want to talk about them real quick about how the mobile research and the issues that are coming on. Even before then, the innovations and advances that are coming, but but there's also good things about we can collect the data on site now. We don't have to wait and go back. You have things like Evernote that I know a lot of researchers are using to team collaborate. So is that notes and research that you're doing in your organization? Is that okay? But with the new developments come new risks. So you have Barnaby Jack at the top, and you also have Jay Radcliffe on the bottom. And what they've done respectively is Barnaby had figured out the hack to pacemakers to either speed up or shut down a pacemaker. Pretty much you are now hacking a human life, if you will. And Jay Radcliffe, I really was following him because he had figured out a hack and the vulnerabilities within insulin machines. Well, I have a niece who uses one of these insulin machines, so it's a huge thing for me to actually think about that. So at the end of the day, as we're looking on how to protect this, another facet of this is not to misalign what we're trying to protect. We can replace the credit card. We get a credit card gets hacked, yes, we're out $2,500 or so, and we have to replace the credit card, but you cannot replace that life. So you really have to look at where we're putting that. But also going into research, the next thing is, I said, kind of the forgotten one is kind of GPS. And this is actually a real interesting mobile feature to actually look at. Anybody here know what happened on May 2nd, 2000? By chance? May 2nd, 2000 was actually a really cool day in GPS technology. It is the day that President Clinton pushed the big blue button and discontinued selective availability for all GPS satellites. That was the day we took having airs about the size of a football field down to airs the size of like a small room. It was really cool. So GPS that was the day when it started becoming more mainstream for us. So we really got to thank them for doing that. But something that we have to look. Anybody here seen the Da Vinci Code or read the Da Vinci Code? You may have heard of GPS dots. The little dot where you could hold in the palm of his hand, and they could figure out where you were, and even like reading, actually what was on your palm at any time. Well, if you start reading what's going on in the field right now, these are becoming bigger and bigger. And this is going to become reality real soon. Almost to the point where as anybody here does their asset control or work with your people who do your asset control or asset inventory, instead of having barcodes on the side, why not just stick a dot on the side? Now we can locate those and we can track those all the time. So we have the asset classification, but also for yourself. Why not just go to Target, buy a bag of the GPS dots, put them on your shoe, put them on your laptop, put them on your kids' shoes. Because how many times are you waking up, or are you in the morning rushing out of school going, where are my shoes? Why should you know where your shoes are? Why don't you ask your computer? They'll just tell you. So, and also, and then I actually saw listed at Sam's Club the other, or yeah, it was Sam's or Peter Supply, where you can actually not just microchip, but there's actually collars now you can buy for like $62 to track your pet. For anybody who has pets who get out of your yard, just a little collar you can buy. But the flip side of this is during all this innovation in GPS lately, security, of course, and you know this time and time again, security has been an afterthought to this. There's really no security on it. But and then you also got to know, people are going to know where I am all the time, or they can always do that anyway. With certain, if you carry certain things now, but we're going to know where everything is all the time, no matter what it is. So it's no more. We aren't talking about Big Brother anymore. We're also now starting to talk about Big Neighbor. The snooping neighbor. The person who they're going to be if they want to track you, because laws are very clear about government tracking. Laws are very unclear and very ambiguous, on tracking of individuals tracking other people, other citizens. So you got eavesdropping and stalking we really have to worry about. And there's really no encryption or authentication in these GPSs. So we really have to look at what's going on now. There's one thing I have up here, and you see this, it's called, if anybody's ever seen that, it's called a wave bubble. This is a way you can stop GPS from tracking you at any time. Now, before you go out and buy them, you can actually buy these on eBay. They're made everywhere, China, Romania. You can find them in different places. The problem is they are illegal in the United States. So if you're thinking about buying one, I wouldn't. Here's the issue. You buy a wave bubble, and you go on a cruise, per se. Well, that wave bubble doesn't just stop right here, in your little special private area. It goes the whole distance. So all of a sudden, you're on the cruise ship. You are now blocking the ship's GPS signal. And think of how many ships these days. I know we have a lot of UPS employees in here who are well aware with the shipping industry, with planes and ships, about how they are, how it's tracked and everything. And using this type of technology, well, it will also block those. So it looks good on the surface, but you could cause a whole bunch of havoc if it was turned on at the wrong spot. And then the third thing we have, though, is GPS spoofing. And this is kind of the cool thing, because in this GPS there is no, there's really no security authentication in there. So, what we have coming, you can, the GPS spoofer can be bad, because of course, the attacker can do it, but the GPS spoofer could be fun. If you figured out your neighbor is tracking you, you can go have fun with them, and all of a sudden you stay in one spot, and you make that little blue dot on your iPhone, start going up the street. So you have to think about that. So I have a couple videos here kind of to show you that there is a professor I got to meet from the University of Texas at Austin last year. He's a really interesting guy. He's doing a lot of, this is who kind of turned me on to this, but he's a really interesting guy, Dr. Todd Humphreys out of there, just doing a lot of research on GPS. And if you've seen him, sorry if this is a repeat, but for those who haven't, this is some of the stuff. The first one I'm going to show you, this is him. They're spoofing an aerial drone. So you know how big drones are today.
Like monopoly, civil GPS signals have a detailed structure, but no built-in defense against counterfeiting or spoofing, which has serious implications for unmanned aerial systems. At the invitation of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the University of Texas Radio Navigation Lab demonstrated this vulnerability in June 2012 by remotely hijacking a small helicopter. Virtually all commercial UAVs depend on civil GPS for navigation. After a remote operator uploads a flight plan with the destination point, signals from the orbiting GPS satellites help the UAV locate itself three-dimensionally. The UAV's autopilot then takes over, moving the UAV toward its destination. Now the malevolent spoofer enters the picture. His spoofing device might be mistaken for a legitimate ground control system, but he has an entirely illegitimate goal in mind. He wishes to hijack the UAV. Inside the UAV's GPS receiver, there is a correlation feed that corresponds to the authentic signals. These three red dots are the tracking points. They try to keep themselves centered on the feed, but the spoofer has caused false feed to appear. and the spoofer moves the false peak into alignment with the true one. The tracking points get hijacked, and the true peak is forced off to one side. A phantom helicopter sliding out the back represents the UAV's false perceived location. Now, as the autopilot commands the UAV, it is the phantom that aligns with the target destination, not the actual UAV. At this point, the spoofer has control of the UAV.
Yeah, I'm ready.
In this preliminary test, performed at Texas Memorial Stadium, we spoofed a hovering UAV into thinking it was moving rapidly upward. The autopilot compensated by sending the UAV hurtling downward. Days later, at White Sands Missile Range, we repeated the test, this time broadcasting spoofing signals over the air from half a mile away. As in the former test, we induced the hovering UAV into thinking it was rising. It responded by plummeting towards the desert floor.
So think about that. If you were the helicopter pilot or you were managing that drone, if you could take that spoof away. And there's one other, because I was talking about ships as well. This is the other research he had done, where they actually were able to take control of a 218-foot super yacht under their permission, of course, with the captain's permission. But off the coast of Italy.
Off the southern coast of Italy, a 65-meter super yacht cuts a path through international waters. It's late June 2013, and the White Rose of Drax has just begun her early season maneuvers. Captain Andrew Schofield and his first officer have carefully charted a course that maintains a safe distance from land and underwater hazards. The course appears on the ship's electronic chart display as a series of waypoints connected by straight lines. The officers on the deck keep an eye out the window and on the radar to avoid collisions with nearby vessels. To stay on the course line, the captain either makes direct periodic adjustments to the ship's heading or supervises an autopilot that performs the same task. This far from land, the crew's and the autopilot sense of the ship's location is based entirely on civil GPS signals. The White Rose of Drax and her crew are part of an unprecedented experiment led by the University of Texas at Austin to investigate maritime navigation security. From the White Rose's upper deck, University of Texas graduate student Deshaun Bhatti, acting in the role of attacker, commands a custom-made GPS spoofing device to transmit a faint ensemble of counterfeit GPS signals toward the ship's GPS antennas. Within the antennas, the fake signals come into precise alignment with the authentic signals received from a half dozen or so overhead GPS satellites. As the attacker increases the power of the spoofing signals, he obtains control over the ship's primary and backup GPS receivers, and, by extension, control over the ship's navigation system. The takeover is clandestine. Both GPS receivers report healthy signals, and no alarm is triggered by the radar, the gyro compass, the magnetic compass, or any other instrument on a bridge. After obtaining control, the attacker commands his spoofer to redirect the ship on a new course, slightly to starboard of the original one. On the bridge, the electronic chart display shows the ship drifting slowly to port. Such a drift isn't unusual. It could be caused by ocean currents. The captain or the autopilot applies a course correction to bring the ship back onto the course line. But in reality, the maneuver has put the ship on a different course, on the course the attacker came on.
So, that's stuff that is going on right now, and that's stuff that has been, researched and proven. So, where could that go? Especially as GPS gets more and more prevalent. I know right now you think, well, we aren't using GPS for that, but what if you start tracking, like where your sales guys are, or we need to track where, when you're on the road to make, if you have the cars or company cars or anything people check out, checking that to see where you're going, or even your personal GPS. If there's somebody out there who wants to mess with you, who puts you on a different course and leads you to a different place. So some of the questions you want to ask about with GPS, especially because where I see it most prevalent with most of us in here would be like with our asset control systems, is what are we going to do when the CIO comes to us because they just got back from a great conference in Las Vegas and they just saw this really cool new asset tracking tool, and all we have to do is put these little black dots on the side and just say synchronize, and bam, we're all up. How are we going to combat, or not combat it, I'm sorry. How are we going to make sure that it, everything is being secured as it should? Because you got to think another part of this GPS is you put all these tags on there and it's not a barcode. What if we get to a point, and it's going to get to a point where we could just sit outside, and now I can now sit outside the building and figure out where every single computer is in that building as I'm doing my reconnaissance if I'm trying to get in, and I can say, all right, so I have the blueprints of the building and now I have the GPS. All I need to do is go through there, because GPS and like geolocation is now coming to the point where it's going to be within, find your way within inside the building. We actually are working at the city right now. We are working with Google, not just for Google Streets, but they're coming back in and they are going to scan through the Louisville Science Center and go through the zoo. So you can be in the Louisville Science Center and be like, how do I get to see the dinosaur exhibit? Oh, if I just click here, it's going to take. I just have to go to the third floor. That's where we're going with this type of technology. It's really cool, but on the other side, whatever's really cool, whatever's really neat, there's going to be some risk involved with it as well. So, what are the protections and countermeasures that we're going to be putting into place? And that's something we can't really answer today because we have such limited knowledge of this right now. That's something we just have to make sure we just go keep in our mind as we go forward with this. So, where do we go from here? We have all this stuff that's going on. I definitely think, even though I say we're redesigning, you have to redesign to think how you think about security. The policy and stuff are still very viable and in place. Now, of course, that's not going to stop everybody, but at least we have something in writing, especially when the auditors come and we have to look at that. But we have something that we can say, this is how we do it here. But designing a specific mobile policy, and even what sort of cloud policy we're going to have, what we're going to allow, what we're not going to allow, how we're going to handle it, the password policies, encrypting your mobile devices. That there's some devices that encrypt automatically, like Apple. If you put a passcode on it, you've encrypted it. Now I know there are bugs in that and you can get around that encryption, but for the most part, it's going to stop most people. But when we get to a liability case, like if we have BYOD, we get to the liability case, I put in there what's going to happen, who's going to be the first, and is the sure-headed IT going to hit the fan? We got to think about what's going to happen. How is that going to be looked at? And one thing to remember, and I'm sorry if we have an MDM as a sponsor. I don't know if we do or not, but MDM, I'm not saying these are bad, but don't think if you put a mobile device manager in place that's going to equal security. All the MDM is doing is turning on what's natively available to the phone. And of course, it's tracking it. It's a good way to track what you have in your environment, but it's not really security, if you will. There are ways around that, and we saw that in the LA school district just recently. And that there's ways that users are going to figure out ways. If you prevent a user from doing something, it's human nature. They're going to try to figure a way around it. I mean, back in the early 2000s, you put a proxy server up. What do? They go to proxy.org and they go after their stuff. We put up different policies. They're going to figure out a way to finagle around it, whether they just want to be cool or whether it's legitimate. So we really got to examine the risk and reward, and how we can prevent users from bypassing controls. And I think one of these is actually just showing and doing awareness to the users and making sure we are constantly hitting users with awareness training. And I don't mean just doing like a once-a-year type of awareness training. Figure out some way you can change that training around to where it's more like an advertising type of campaign. If you have a local intranet type of site, is there a way once a week or once a month you can put like just security tips up there? Protecting them in their home and the business. You have to hit them from a personal level to show them that this is in their best interest to look at. And I say like an advertising campaign, that's something I'm really trying to develop right now, and I really feel You have to just constantly just give it over and over, because think, you do a security awareness class, and all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, they forget about it, right? You go back to them, and you can even go, well, who's your CISO? I don't know. So just keep hitting them, because like one thing, I haven't been to McDonald's in 3 years, but I can tell you that 2 all-beef patty special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickle, onions on a sesame seed bun is a Big Mac, because I've seen it over and over and over again. So that's something we really have to think about. And that may be one way to do this, because mobile devices are such a wild west and such a free environment. That's something we have to look at. So I'll leave you with this. Since we're all security people here, I can actually give you this, and people will actually get it. I've hung this up in my office since 2007. This is when this one was published by Dilbert. But MORDAC, the Preventer of Information Security Services, or Information Service, security is more important than usability. In a perfect world, no one would be able to do anything. So I'll leave you with that. And I thank you all very much for your attention today. I hope I gave you some sort of education. Thank you all very much.
I'd like to thank Mr. Matt Witten for that presentation, and also present him with a gift to commemorate his keynote presentation today. And because we are in Louisville, the Louisville Slugger, and is commemorated with his name and the date that he's presented here. Give him a hand again, please. The next breakout session is 10 o'clock. And in this room we will have InfoGuard. So please enjoy your day.